Welcome to the Raiders franchise in the off-season episode, and finally, this long and miserable season has come to an end where the Raiders will be picking top 5 in the draft, and we finally get to head to an off-season where we get to make our own stamp on the team and make some of the moves to really make that team ours. There's going to be a lot of changes to this roster, to the schemes, to the coaching staff. Everywhere is getting shaken up, and there's going to be a lot of stuff to cover in this video. Now quickly, just before we get into things, I do have a lot of stuff planned for this offseason to make it a lot different than off-seasons you see from other franchises on YouTube, and I made a lot of graphics when it came to our free agency and departures and additions, and I have a whole thing for the draft, so I hope you all enjoy what I have in store for you and give it a chance, and let me know what you think of it. But as you can see the stats here, and I think with all that out of the way, we can get into the offseason, and we start with just a couple of retirements in the coaching staff. You won't see anything too crazy in the retirements. There are some big players, and Trent Williams being the biggest one, and for us, we lose an offensive lineman, we lose Brian Hoyer. I mean, nothing crazy, but a couple of retirements around the league just thought I'd show you. And also in the coaching staff, Pete Carroll retired, so that's pretty big, I guess, so we won't be having to deal with him if we ever run to the Seahawks. But now let's get into the coaching staff, and in the coaching staff, we made a big signing. Our defense was lacking, and we needed a lot of help, so I went out and got Todd Bowles to lead this defense, and it is a coordinator that I am very happy with, and we'll see what he can do with the defense. Now let's go into the departures for this Raiders team. As you can see, we have a lot of people moving on as we cut Jimmy Garoppolo, we cut Chandler Jones, we cut Brandon Facyson, and we free up over $40 million worth of cap space. And as you can see in the bottom right, we made a small, tiny trade as we dealt Robert Spillane for a 6th round pick, which also freed up another about $3 million for us. And when it came to our expiring contracts, we just about let everybody walk except for 3 players. We wanted to keep Andre James at center, who's our starting center all year. Bilal Nichols was a decent part of our D-line, and we want to keep him in maybe less as a starter, more as a rotational piece. And Marcus Peters, it was a weak free agency class for the cornerback, so we kept Marcus Peters as insurance, all on 1-year deals. As you can see on the left side, we let a lot of guys go. Duke Shelley, David Long at cornerback. We let Sammy Watkins go, who got a season-ending injury early in the season. We'll be looking for a fullback. We'll be looking for another backup tight end. Jermaine Illuminor we let go. We let DeAndre Carter go, who was obviously a starting receiver for a majority of the season. So we have a lot of places that we need to fill in free agency and in the draft. So when you let about 20 players, leave your team, and you're looking for new starters on the offensive line, our receiving core, our active wide receivers is down to Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker. At quarterback, with no Jimmy Garoppolo, we're left with just Aiden O'Connell as Brian Hoyer retired. We need a lot of weaponry on the offensive side of the football, as our offense is, as it's slated right now, is looking like Josh Jacobs and just about him and nobody else except for Jacoby Myers, and we'll see if Michael Mayer can make a year 2 leap. But we need other weapons around, and we need to figure out the quarterback position, because while Aiden O'Connell wasn't bad for a backup quarterback, we do not see him as the future starter. So let's get into free agency, where I will show you all the moves made by the rest of the league, some of the big signings. Starting from the top, as you can see, the quarterback market. We wanted to keep an eye on Jimmy Garoppolo to see where he went. We obviously weren't going to bring him back, but he goes to Washington to back up Sam Howell and whoever they may pick up in the draft, because they have a top 2 pick. Kirk Cousins was the top option at the quarterback position. Honestly, we didn't even really consider Kirk Cousins. We didn't even throw out an offer to him, but he goes to Tennessee on a 1-year contract. The Lions, of course, have a lot of money to spend. They go out, they get Mike Williams, Josh Allen, and Michael Pierce, so the Lions are going to be potentially pretty dangerous as they add a lot of pieces to that already growing roster. Keenan Allen goes to the Vikings to be opposite of Justin Jefferson. But now without a quarterback, you wonder who's going to be throwing to all those receivers in Minnesota. Gabe Davis goes to the Bears as the Bears continue to try to surround Justin Fields with more weapons. Odell Beckham joins up with Kirk Cousins in Tennessee. We have Christian Wilkins going to the Steelers as the Steelers really wanted to improve the interior of their defensive line. Devin White was a player that we were trying to go after. Todd Bowles obviously coached in Tampa Bay and used Devin White to his fullest ability as a great blitzing linebacker. We wanted to bring Devin White in to try to go next to Divine Diablo and give him his coach that knew how to use him best. Unfortunately, White just didn't really want to come here, and he accepts a deal for Atlanta. Levante David goes to Arizona. Marcus May goes to the Steelers. And in another free agent signing that I didn't put here, but it was a player we were heavily targeting. I said it was a pretty weak corner class, but a player I really did want was Christian Fulton. Christian Fulton, unfortunately, also did not want to come here. He goes to the Houston Texans. And as we get into our free agency class, I can tell you that, to no surprise, not a lot of players really wanted to come here. As you can see, our free agency class now, as we start from the bottom, we go with AJ Cann, a backup lineman. Matt Ioannidis will see plenty of time in the defensive line, as we didn't really get a lot of great players on the D-line. It's just going to be a heavy rotation. We're going to see who steps up and who breaks out. Rayshawn Jenkins at backup safety. CJ Ham will replace Jakob Johnson. PJ Walker will be an insurance policy at quarterback and to get a veteran in the room. Gotcha will be a potential starting defensive tackle for us. We brought in Damian Harris to potentially be a backup running back. Jonnu Smith will be the backup tight end next to Michael Mayer, as I really wanted to get someone who can complement Mayer a bit better, someone with some athleticism, whereas Michael Mayer is more of a possession guy. Sebastian Joseph Day will probably be a starting day one defensive lineman for us. And then the two top signings for us are key acquisitions. John Runyon at guard will replace Alex Bars, and Runyon is a massive upgrade for us at guard, and we got him on a 2-year deal. And I said we were going after a linebacker to put next to Divine Diablo. We let Robert Spillane go because we had every intention of bringing in a linebacker, and that linebacker is Devin Bush. Now, he's not Devin White, but he possesses a lot of the same athleticism that Devin White does, and we're going to hope that we can have Todd Bowles use him in a similar role to what Devin White was used as, and we're going to be blitzing him a lot and utilizing his athleticism to move him all around the field and have him flying sideline to sideline. We know he's going to make a lot of mistakes, and you know he's still got to develop and grow as a player. He's a little limited, but he's going next to Divine Diablo, and I think it's going to pair a really great athletic linebacking duo for this team for potentially years to come. But we let about 20 players go, and we brought in about 11. So we still got a lot of holes to plug in. As you can see, still no quarterback. And the draft is up next, so let's get into the draft, where it's a whole draft special. What I'll be doing for the draft is I will be taking you through the entire first round and kind of breaking down some of the draft story players that I talked about throughout the season. Any player that I talk about outside of the first round will only be some of our picks outside the first round and some of the draft story players that didn't get picked in the first round. So I think there's about 40 players that I made graphics for that I'm going to be talking about. Obviously, some will be longer than others. If it's a non-draft story player, we'll just kind of gloss over it. But you know, there are some really interesting picks and interesting moves that go down in this draft, and we have a lot to talk about. So let's get into the draft special for the Raiders franchise. It is finally time for the NFL draft, and it is such a big draft class. A lot of stories that unfolded throughout the college football season, a lot of players to key in on, but it will be all starting with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, just to let you know, the Raiders have pick number 3, so we won't have to wait too long to see our Raiders pick, but we got to cover some of these other teams and other players first, as let's get this started with the first pick of the 2024 NFL draft. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Trey Dutch, edge rusher, Ohio State. And this is going to be a surprise for a lot of people, as the Buccaneers pass on quarterback Byron Rohit, who is a consensus guaranteed he's going in the top 3. We just don't know to which team, but Byron Rohit gets passed up, and the Buccaneers maybe going to roll with Baker Mayfield or see what they can do at quarterback elsewhere. But They go with Trey Dutch, the perceived potential best straight-up player in this draft class. A special edge rusher to help a team that just lost Todd Bowles to the Raiders, has lost edge rush. They've lost Jason Pierre-Paul in years past, and they have lost Shaq Barrett to age, and he has regressed to a point where he is not even really that viable of a starter anymore. But they are going to try to build this team back up from the defensive side of the football. Dutch helped lead Ohio State to a really impressive 11-win season. They fell short of the college football playoffs, but regardless, he put up 14 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, poked the ball out 3 times, and as you can see from his athletic score, he is a monster of an athlete, and is no surprise that he is going in the top of the draft, because like the guys before him, like the Chase Youngs and the Nick Bosas, the Joey Bosas, all who have gone top 5 as an Ohio State edge rusher, some would say he is the best of the bunch, and we will see if he can, reach the heights of a guy like Nick Bosa in the league. With the second pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select Byron Rohit, QB out of UCLA. I think when the Buccaneers, submitted their draft card for Trey Dutch, there was a collective party in the war room of Washington as they get their guy, Byron Rohit, at quarterback, and they haven't been able to party this much about a quarterback selection since RG3 all those years ago, and coincidentally enough, he was the number 2 overall pick in his draft as well. But, Rohit's not like RG3, as he doesn't have the legs that he does, but he, while being quite the opposite player type, has an absolute cannon of an arm, and as a pocket presence type player, a guy you have to stand in there and try to take down in the pocket. I compare him a lot to Ben Roethlisberger's just sheer power and difficulty to take down, as it's going to be hard for any blitzing DB to try and take him down, as he's just going to shed them off. But when it comes to his arm and his arm strength, it is the strongest in the class, and he was the consensus number 1 quarterback in this class, and there was no one even trying to debate that there was another quarterback that should have been taken at the top of the board. There's no other quarterback that people even think is a top 10 player in most mock drafts, but Rohit is a guy who, arguably could have won the Heisman if it wasn't for the late surgeons of Thomas DeShong up in Oregon. But as we talk about his arm, he got that Josh Allen type confidence where he can make any throw, and sometimes he will try to get away with throws that's like, you probably shouldn't be throwing that, but you take those mistakes with all the good that he gives you. He gives you so much good that some of the bad, you can take it. You take it with the good, because he will make so many dynamic plays. He will make so many incredible throws, and he helped turn UCLA into one of the most dynamic passing attacks in the nation. And now he's going to be coming to Washington, where he's got a perfect player to help him, continue his success, as Terry McLaurin's going to be an absolute dangerous threat for the rest of the league now. With this Washington team, that defense, those weapons, don't be surprised if Washington is a team that, despite picking at number 2, can go straight to the playoffs next year, as Rohit doesn't have the same issues that other quarterbacks before him with these really strong dynamic arms have had. He doesn't have to sit for a year like Mahomes. He doesn't have to have that really awful struggle of a year that Josh Allen had. He's a lot more polished, a lot more NFL ready than those guys that came before him, and he is going to be a day 1 starting quarterback, and a really solid starting quarterback. He's going to go through his struggles, but he's going to show flashes that are going to make you so excited for the future. So don't be surprised if Washington is a dangerous team as early as this upcoming season. With the 3rd pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Thomas DeShong, quarterback, Oregon. And we might just have ourselves a bit of a draft day stunner, as Thomas DeShong, the Heisman winning quarterback, all the way at number 3. This is going to cause a lot of heated debates, as he was not a player who really anyone had going this high. Some people thought, just out of sheer need, that a team would reach for DeShong, But I don't think anyone really thought the Raiders would go this high for Thomas DeShong. A lot of rumors were saying that the Raiders would trade down and maybe then try to scoop up a quarterback later on, maybe make a move for a quarterback. But just standing there at 3 and taking Thomas DeShong really shows that he's their guy. And, you know, as an analyst, you have to say, you look at who was taken in recent years. Is he the same type of player athletically as Anthony Richardson, who went at 4? No, Anthony Richardson is a more dynamic, stronger arm player, but I'd say he's better than Justin Fields as a prospect. But Fields went at 11, Richardson went at 4, so you're saying DeShong maybe at best is like a 6, 7, 8, but taking him at 3, it's a bold move. And the Raiders are going all in on Thomas DeShong. Now, that's the analyst side saying that maybe this is a pick that you're going to regret because of how high you're going for him. But the person who's covering the Raiders, which is just, I'm covering the Raiders overall. I gotta say I'm excited about this pick because Thomas DeShong was the most dynamic, polarizing player in all of college football. And he took an Oregon team that was really bad. Like, Oregon started at number 24 in the polls. A lot of it was out of respect just for the school. A lot of it was respect for DeShong as a player. But Oregon has no other players in this draft that are going to be picked day 1 or day 2. And they might sneak in a couple of day 3 guys. But this is a team devoid of elite NFL talent. And Thomas DeShong, from day 1, beat TCU. And some of the talent on the team really started to shine through in the early part of the season as they dropped a game and they lost to Washington. And you're like, okay, that's the Oregon that we kind of expected this season. They're going to struggle. But then Thomas DeShong, showing that he is probably the best leader in this draft class, is like a guy that players just want to fight for, a player that guys just want to, really give their all for. He ripped off an undefeated streak like no other, became the hottest team in college football, won the Heisman, took Oregon all the way and probably to the college football playoffs. And even when people didn't think they deserved it, think Ohio State should have got in over them because all they did was they just lost to Michigan. Well, Thomas DeShong beat Michigan and took the team to the national championship. Now, he lost the national championship because the Clemson defense was a little too much to overcome. But that is beyond the expectations that anyone thought that the Oregon team could go. And he's coming onto a Raider team, like Oregon, devoid of a lot of talent, a lot of receiving talent. You're coming onto a team where Jacoby Myers is your top weapon right now. And we'll see if he can elevate the team like he did in Oregon. But he's a leader. He's a guy that players love. He's a hard worker. He's dynamic. He's talented. He's going to provide upside as a rushing threat early on. He's going to be a fun player to watch, but he's going to take time. He's not going to be good immediately. He's going to make a lot of mistakes. It's a risky pick, but the Raiders seem to love him, and I can see why. But we'll see if in due time that Thomas DeShong is the guy that the Raiders have desperately needed for a long time. With the 4th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Reggie Woodward, edge rusher, Buffalo. Every year in the draft process, there's always those players that really shoot up the draft boards, when it comes to the combine and, everything else. And this year, Reggie Woodward was that player. As you could see, he was incredibly productive, but he was at Buffalo. And, small school, easy to dominate the lower competition. And everyone looks at that and kind of rolls their eyes. And it's like, well, how does he test? How does he interview? How does he do at the Senior Bowl? Well, he dominated at the Senior Bowl. He tested incredibly well. He interviewed well. And everyone's like, yeah, he's got the athleticism. He's got the production. He's got everything. He's going from, a guy who was late first round to now all the way up to the top 5. And the Bears are looking for a pass rusher because they haven't had a great edge rusher since Khalil Mack, who, coincidentally enough, also went to Buffalo. So You know, the Bears obviously looking to get the next Khalil Mack, and I don't know if Reggie Woodward is going to be a Defensive Player of the Year type of player, but with that level of production, if he can translate that to the NFL, he definitely will, and I think this is a solid pick for the Chicago Bears to try to help that edge rusher. They do have another first-round pick in a little bit, so we'll see what they do when they get on the clock for a second time. With the 5th pick of the 2024 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Arwell Gannady, cornerback, Clemson. And we have the first member of the national championship winning Clemson defense to come off the board, and it is the cornerback, their top guy, Arwell Gannady, goes to an Arizona Cardinals team that is in desperate need of a cornerback, as they were trotting out Marco Wilson as their number 1 all year, and Gannady will slide in beautifully as their number 1 corner for this upcoming season. But Gannady is a player who does not need to pick the ball up all that much. He only had 2 interceptions, though he did have a big game-sealing interception against North Carolina in his final season. 21 pass breakups to go along with it, as he does not intercept the ball a whole lot. He doesn't really tend to, but he'll always get his hand on the football. He'll always contest. He'll always make it difficult for any receiver that is trying to go up and make a play to catch that football. And that's all you could really ask for, as he shuts down his side of the field very effectively. And many quarterbacks do try and test him because there isn't as big of a fear of an interception, as he will just swat the ball down. But I mean, that's how you get to 21 pass breakups, and occasionally he will take one back. But when it comes to his upside, I think he is an all-pro level player with, you know, obviously the right coaching and obviously the right system. And I think even still at the floor, you're getting a really sturdy, solid, reliable starting cornerback for a very long time. And like I said, he's going to be tested very early on. He's going to a division that's going to have Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf, and Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. He's going to a division where he is the number 1. Just everyone's going to be looking towards him to cover the top guy, and he's going to be tested very early, but we're going to see if he can sink or swim in the deep waters of that division and all the receivers that come with it. With the 6th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Clement Trombetta, linebacker, Clemson. You knew it wasn't going to be long before both these Clemson top elite players come off the board, and here they go back-to-back at 5 and 6. And while Trombetta is at the linebacker position, which is not as valuable as, you know, quarterback, cornerback, wide receiver, edge rusher, all those positions that were taken ahead of Trombetta, except wide receiver, but all the key positions that were taken ahead of a linebacker, it was at those very much you build your roster around those players. But if you're going just the straight up best player at his position, regardless of positional value, I think Trombetta is the best straight up player you will find in this draft class. He's the safest bet. He's the most reliable pick that you will have, as he is just an incredibly special player. And we already talked about it earlier in the season, but he is a player who idolized Luke Kuechly, growing up a Panthers fan in Carolina, went to Clemson, and wore number 59 to model his game after Luke Kuechly, as he is the closest thing to Luke Kuechly you will see. And, you know, with over 150 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, 24 pass breakups. I mean, it is just an insane season for a linebacker to have, and he is a player that not only is smart, he's instinctive, he elevates the players around him, he's a leader, he is so intelligent, and he gets there. Even though his athleticism isn't jumping off the charts, he's a very nice athlete, but he makes a 4.5 40 look like a 4.4 with how quick he reacts to the ball and how quick he can get to the backfield, how quick he can get to a receiver, how quick he does everything. And for a team that had Bobby Wagner for a year, you're getting a player who's going to be, you know, at that level of an all-pro linebacker. And I would be shocked if Trombetta isn't at the bare minimum a perennial Pro Bowl linebacker. And at best, you're getting potentially one of the greatest linebackers of all time. That's how highly I think of Trombetta. He probably is my just favorite player in this class. And, you know, as someone who's covering the Raiders, it sucks to see him go somewhere else, but I kind of want to see him on the field. And when we play the Rams, we will definitely try to key in on that game because it's going to be fun to watch him play. With the 7th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Matt Hughes, tackle, Wisconsin. Well, I can say leave it to the Patriots in a draft class full of exciting, incredible players to, reach a little and take a guy who's a nice tackle. But I don't think he's the best lineman in the class, I will say. I think we'll be getting to him very soon. But the Patriots, this is what they do. They take their guys, they take their solid, very reliable players, and Matt Hughes is a player who he's going to be really nice. He's going to be a day one starter for them, and he's going to plug in at tackle. He's going to do his thing, but I don't really have a whole lot to report on because Wisconsin wasn't very good this season, as they may have had a typically nice run game, but if I had a lot to tell you about Wisconsin, I would. But, for a team that won about 4 games last year, there's not a whole lot to say. But the Patriots get a starting tackle, and we'll move on. With the 8th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Thurman Melvin, wide receiver, Florida State. I think the mission from the Bears was very simple. We're building around Justin Fields, as they have gone out and done everything they can to surround him with weapons last year. They go trade down from the number 1 pick, get DJ Moore. They go and sign Gabe Davis in free agency this offseason. And now with the 8th pick, they draft the number 1 wide receiver in the draft class, which is Thurman Melvin. And now you have built yourself a very, very dangerous trio of wide receivers, as Melvin's going to go right under the outside and be an incredible player. And you remember who I compared him to. I said his best comparison was Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall obviously had some great years in Chicago, and now you're getting a player who is very, very similar to Brandon Marshall. A bigger-bodied, physical receiver, 6'2", just 230, can run through some players if he needs to, is physical, will go up and snag the ball out of the air. Very, very reliable hands, the best hands in this draft class. Is just such a sturdy, reliable, great player. And Florida State, who had a lot of ups and downs throughout the season, they were always able to turn to Melvin to make a big play, and it helped them win a couple of games. And now we have to look out for the Bears because they have built a trio of great weapons. With their earlier first-round pick, they go and draft a great edge rusher potentially. They have already signed Tremaine Edmonds the previous offseason. We'll see if guys like Kyler Gordon can grow. We'll see how this team can really put everything together, because if Justin Fields is everything that they hope he is, the Bears are going to be a dangerous team. Trading down from that number 1 pick has netted them so much, and we'll see if the Bears can be a dangerous team for years to come. With the 9th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select A.J. Perkins, guard, Texas. I said it wouldn't be very long till we're talking about the best lineman in the class, and here he is, A.J. Perkins. I think the Patriots, while they needed a tackle, they made a mistake not taking Perkins because he is the far and away best lineman in this class, and it's not even like he's a risky player. He is a great player who could be legendary, as I'd say behind Trombetta, I think Perkins is the next safest pick in this class. But you got to look out for the Texas O-line, not just in this draft with Perkins, but next year they're going to be having guys go in the first round. And this Texas O-line was the best in the nation, and it was led by Perkins, who is a dominant run blocker. And it is potentially scary to see him go to Miami, where he's going to be lining up potentially next to Teron Armstead and whatever side of the offensive line. If they want to go for that strong side with Armstead and Perkins, you're looking at an incredibly dangerous duo right next to one another. And I mean, he's a very nice pass blocker, but he is a dominant run blocker. And for a team that runs, a lot of wide zone and, on the Shanahan tree with Mike McDaniel, they're going to have a lot of fun moving Perkins around, as he can just mow over anybody. Like, he will not get knocked off. He will not get bulldozed. He will not get bullied. He does the bullying. He is the bully of whatever offensive line. And any D lineman, I would say even the top guys have to look out, because he is going to be so hard to get off of. And it's going to be fun watching AJ Perkins match up against some of those guys. We're going to see him against, potentially Aaron Donald. In his own division, we're going to see him against Quinnen Williams twice a year, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll see what battles AJ Perkins has in the trenches, but he is going to be a phenomenal offensive lineman, and I think it's a great pick for the Dolphins. On to pick 10 in the Houston Texans, and they select Chris Horn, a defensive end from Michigan. And Horn was a part of that defense that helped Michigan go all the way to the #1 spot in the nation, and unfortunately they came up short of a national championship, as they couldn't even make it past Oregon. And Horn did struggle a little bit trying to chase down Deshaun, but he's a nice player, a productive player. Is he going to be a dominant player? I don't think he's a dominant guy. He's a little undersized to play on the interior, and he's a little slow to play edge. But this is a team that already drafted Will Anderson. They're not looking for a dominant #1. They're looking for a nice complementary #2. And they think Chris Horn, opposite of Will Anderson, can be that for their defense. And, I trust D'Amico Ryans to develop just about anyone on the defensive side of the football. So we'll see what Chris Horn can do, and if he can be a nice complementary piece to Will Anderson and form a devastating edge rush duo. The man named after the city of Orlando won't have to go too far. He is going to Jacksonville. Orlando Skies is the 11th pick for the Jaguars, a team that lost Josh Allen to free agency. And with Trayvon Walker continuing to try to develop into what the Jaguars hoped they would get from him as a #1 overall pick, they are drafting Orlando Skies to pair on the other side of him. And Skies is a crazy athlete, and now you have an insane duo of athletes on the edge. And Orlando Skies is a player who's very productive in the SEC for Alabama back-to-back years. I mean, it's hard to argue. You can't really say he didn't go up against great competition, because he was sometimes dominant in the SEC, flying by big linemen, as he will get caught if he is facing a big, strong lineman. He will get, caught up in a block, and it's hard for him to, power his way through, but he has great bend. He's really fast. He's really agile. Really just interesting player. Some of these edge rushers in the recent years have really piqued the interest of some of the teams in the NFL, and I think the Eagles are really the big team with that, with drafting Nolan Smith last year and having Hassan Reddick be, an all-pro caliber player, and now you're looking at Orlando Skies, who's the closest comp for him is those two players, and the Jaguars want a bit of a piece of that, as we'll see if Orlando Skies can be what Hassan Reddick is and what they hope Nolan Smith will be in Philadelphia. Will he be that for the Jaguars? With the 12th pick, the Steelers go and select Delvin Page, and this is a team that, with Cam Hayward going out the door, really wanted to prioritize the interior of the defensive line, and they have suddenly built a very interesting duo, as they sign Christian Wilkins in free agency, and then they go and draft Delvin Page, who will pair next to him on the inside with TJ Watt on the edge and Alex Highsmith on the other side. That's a quad of players that could really be interesting for the Steelers if Page is, exactly what they hope he is, and they sign Marcus May at safety to pair with Minkah Fitzpatrick. And this is a defense now that is really starting to potentially reform what the Steelers defense is of old. The Steelers defenses that were dominant. I don't know if they'll ever reach the heights of what James Harrison and Troy Polamalu brought to them, but I mean, you got an elite safety, you got an elite edge rusher, you got a really good interior D-line potentially. You're continuing to build. I think you're a cornerback and maybe a linebacker away. They lost, obviously Devin Bush, in the last year, and they brought in Cole Holcomb, but I think if you get another linebacker to put next to Holcomb and you get some cornerbacks, the Steelers defense is going to be very dangerous potentially. And now we got the Lions at pick 13, and they go Enrique Tolliver, a cornerback from SMU. And you see, the thing that jumps off the page for me is, 1, he's 6'3", 2, he runs a 4.45, and 3, he had 3 forced fumbles at the cornerback position. and he has mastered that Charles Tillman peanut punch mechanic, as it is such a valuable asset for a player to have, to be able to just punch the ball out. Some guys just have a knack for it, and he is one of those players that has a knack for the football. And with 3 fumble recoveries, 2 interceptions, and a guy who is, for his size, pretty solid at tackling despite being under 200 pounds. He's a guy who is going to be a really fun player. He does present some risks, obviously, playing at a smaller school in SMU, and he is more drafted for his athleticism and his nose for the football, but he can be a little lax in coverage, a little risky. He does try to play up the fact that he is so big and athletic, and, maybe bait quarterbacks into throwing passes that they maybe shouldn't, but he will occasionally come up with a play where it's like, man, not many guys can make that play. Not many guys at 6'3" can, catch up to that guy or can reach up and make that play, because he got just a really, really great build and, again, a great nose for the football. And for a Lions team that it really needed some corner help, I think this is a very nice pick. But there was a cornerback they passed up on in Amon Clay, who we talked about earlier in the season. Interesting that they passed up on him and went with a more risky, bigger body Tolliver instead. Pick 14, the Los Angeles Chargers. You want to talk about a player who is boom or bust? It is Kirabo Guandoya from Boise State, the tackle, who is just an absolute tank of a tackle. Just so strong and so athletic for his size, but he presents a lot of risk, and he is one of those players who occasionally you'll have these offensive linemen that go mid to late first round that are so athletic, so raw in talent, and you hope that you can mold them into a great tackle, because if you can, they will be so special. But a lot of the time, those players also whiff badly. And Guandoya is one of those players where you're either getting a great tackle, a really good, just big player who can just stop edge rushers in their tracks, the type of player that can keep a guy like Orlando Skies in check for an entire game if he gets his hands on him, or you're getting a potential just turnstile at tackle. And I do think there is potential where if he doesn't work out at tackle, you can maybe slide him into guard. I think that would be a potential thing. I mean, you don't often see really tall guards, but at 6'6", he could maybe work at guard, and his power and his athleticism, I think he could be a nice mauler if it doesn't work out, but that's worst case scenario. The Chargers are drafting him to be a tackle, and we'll see if they can develop him to be a great tackle. The Cardinals at 15 go with Oliver Smith, and I'll be honest, I lied a little bit when I was hyping up Thomas DeShong. I said he had no NFL caliber players. He had one, and that was on defense, and it was Oliver Smith. But I do think this is a big reach for the Cardinals, if I'm being honest. I think Oliver Smith's more of a day 2 guy, but the Cardinals clearly liked him. And, with his 12.5 sacks, you can see with the production they liked. And the Pac-12 was probably the best conference in the nation this year. So I can see what they may have liked, but I'm not the biggest Oliver Smith fan. But, we'll see if he can prove me wrong, I guess. But I did lie a little bit in saying Thomas DeShong had no NFL talent, but I mean, still, he had very little NFL talent, and we'll see if Oliver Smith can maybe prove me wrong in saying that he wasn't really worthy of being a first-round pick. But the Cardinals, double up on defense, Arwell Gannady, Oliver Smith, edge rusher, cornerback, not bad to try to build up the defense, and, it seems like they're rolling with Kyler Murray as their quarterback for the future. The Vikings at 16 go with Jeff Patrick. This is a pretty strong linebacking class, I will say, as this probably won't be the last linebacker we see in the first round. And as you can remember, Trombetta going top 10, but Jeff Patrick, in majority of draft classes, would be the top linebacker. It's just he happened to be, in there with a generational talent. But Patrick's a really nice backer. 4.4, closer to 4.5 speed. Really smart player, really intelligent, always know where the play is going. He's a really solid linebacker, and for a team that had lost Eric Kendricks in the last year, they need a linebacker. And I think Jeff Patrick's going to fill in that role pretty nicely for them. And as the Vikings try to, get out of this middle of the pack of the league, and they lost Kirk Cousins, so I would imagine this is a team in full rebuild. They did pass up on a quarterback, so I don't know. We'll see what the Vikings do. They're in a very odd position. And at pick 17, this is an interesting one. I brought up the Vikings potentially passing up on a quarterback because I knew it was very close to this guy going. Jean-Marc Aldrick goes in our division to the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson is done in Denver, and Jean-Marc Aldrick will be the Broncos' future quarterback, and he is the definition of a high floor, low ceiling quarterback who can come in, be a distributor, be a point guard, be a safe, reliable Alex Smith, Mac Jones, whatever comparison you want to give. I compare him to Alex Smith. He's perfectly fine. And for a team that has Sean Payton at coach, has a solid defense, has weapons that still we're trying to figure out. Is Javonte Williams a great back? He was definitely great against us. Is Jerry Jeudy finally going to break out? Is Cortland Sutton, what's he like? Is Tim Patrick going to be the same off of all the injuries he keeps suffering? It's a team stuck in the middle of the pack in the league in a really tough AFC, and they felt Russell Wilson wasn't cutting it for them, and Jean-Marc Aldrick, we'll be seeing him twice a year, and we will have in year one what looks to be a rookie quarterback showdown in the division twice a year. It's going to be exciting to face, a first-round quarterback, and we'll see if, the second and third quarterback off the board, did we make a mistake not going with Mark Aldrick? Did we maybe should have traded down and taken him? Maybe the Broncos should have traded up and taken Deshaun. I don't know, but we'll see. Pick 18 goes to the Saints, and there goes Amon Clay, the third corner off the board. As I thought he would be the second corner. He was my corner number 2, but he goes 3, and he will get to pair alongside Marshawn Lattimore in a cornerback group that was already pretty decent with Paulson and Debo and Taylor over there. I think that I guess they seen one of them wasn't really working out, or they were looking at Lattimore potentially getting up there in age, and they wanted to, get a guy who can be the potential number 1 for years to come. I did say when I was reviewing him during the season, he had potential to move to safety if you were really fine with him not being a great tackler. He had the ability to play safety in coverage, so maybe they'll be moving him around a bit. I think it's an interesting pick, and it makes the Saints secondary, they're adding strength to their already strong secondary. I think the secondary is the strongest part of that team, and they're adding to it. And for the Saints team, we'll see if this works out. They surprised a little bit, me at least. They almost made the playoffs, and we'll see if the Saints secondary, maybe with Tyrann Mathieu, Amon Clay, Marshawn Lattimore, young guys at corner, we'll see if they really emerge as one of the top secondaries in the league. It's been a revolving door of tight ends for Joe Burrow and the Bengals, as Burrow has went from CJ Uzomah to Hayden Hurst to Irv Smith and now to Sean Samuel. And I think that it was a good move by the Bengals to just prioritize locking down a position that has seen constant change for an offense that has been pretty sturdy and coherent, with Joe Mixon being a consistent starter and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd. Tight end's been the only weapon that has just constantly changed, but now seems they're locking it up, and Sean Samuel is a player who not only is going to be a tight end for them, but is also going to be that big slot receiver running a 4-4. He's, a bit shorter for a tight end. He's going to be a lot like an Evan Ingram for the Jaguars, and I think, when Tyler Boyd eventually moves on or is into the capabilities of being a starting receiver for them, I think you could see Sean Samuel take over some of the slot reps for Boyd as well. And I think it's a versatile player, and it once again just makes the Bengals passing offense all that more dangerous. I really like the pick. So nice job from the Bengals. We have a trade. The Giants, who were originally at pick 20, have traded out the first round completely. The 49ers have traded their next year's first round pick to leap up to 20, and they will have 2 first round picks now, and they use this one here at 20 to take Jared Larson at safety. They lost Jimmy Ward to the Texans last year, and they were going to pick Jared Larson to pair with Hufanga. And I talked about Larson at the start of the season, where he was a player who's getting a lot of national recognition, and it was an all-NCAA player, despite being on a small school non-Power 5 conference. And he was getting a lot of flack, bad competition or whatever. I thought that was crazy. I think he's a really good player. And you see when he got to play Ohio State, he was incredible against Ohio State, one of the best players on the field, regardless of team. And I think the Niners really seen that he was being slept on a little bit, as I think he was a player that was kind of a borderline first rounder, maybe day two. I think he played himself into being a solidified first rounder, and the Niners clearly agreed, as they wanted to move up and make sure they could get him. As I'm kind of disappointed that he didn't make it to our second first round pick. I would have been interested in taking him potentially. But I think it's a great pick from the Niners, and it once again adds to a secondary that is continuing to get better, as Hufanga and Larson could make one of the stronger safety duos in the league. The Falcons at 21 are going all in on upside and athleticism. Sherrard Maynard from Louisville, a D tackle. Yes, he is a 300-pound defensive tackle who can run a 4.7 and, also give you 34 reps on the bench. His stats were decent for a nose tackle, and I think that he has a obviously really high ceiling, but also incredibly high, bust potential here, and they're going to need a D tackle to replace Grady Jarrett eventually, and this is the guy that they are going to be going for to try to develop behind Grady Jarrett. I think it's, nice that he will get to sit a little bit and learn from, a guy who's been on the Falcons his whole career. And I think it's a risky pick. It's a risky move, but I think it's a good spot for him to land. And obviously, I'm excited to know if he can become that great player, because if he can utilize all that athleticism, he's going to be really dangerous. It is status quo. Green Bay Packers back at it with another offensive lineman or defensive player, and they will go center. Manny Goran, the guy who was helping Jean-Marc Aldrich a lot in Michigan. And this is yet another Michigan player coming off the board. I believe this is like the third one in the first round. But I think it's a great pick. It's someone that can really help out Jordan Love a lot, be a center for the future. And while it's not the flashiest, most exciting pick, it's a really nice pick. And he's going to be a really good offensive lineman. He allowed no sacks in his, last season. A lot of people will like to knock him for being in a very quick pass offense. He didn't really have to hold up in pass protection. And, Michigan was not the most dominant of run teams, but I just tend to not really put that on him. He did his job. He was asked to block for a very quick pass offense. He was asked to just do whatever he was told to do. He did very well, and I could argue he could have went higher, but center is deemed the least valuable offensive position, so I can understand why he goes to number 22 here. I think it's a nice pick, and I think some of the criticisms of him are a little ridiculous, but we'll see how he does with Jordan Love and see if they can get the ball out quickly down there, because if they can get a quick pass offense going in Green Bay, Goran will fit in perfectly. The Jets at 23 go Warren Farr, an edge rusher at Penn State. Now, I will say about this pickup is Warren Farr wasn't even the top edge rusher at Penn State, and that is because next year, an edge rusher from Penn State will be drafted in the first round, and trust me when I tell you, he won't be picked at 23. It's very likely to be a top 5 pick, but Warren Farr was a good complementary piece to a guy we will be talking about next season. But as for Farr and what the Jets got here, they got a nice solid piece to go along with their defense. It doesn't really feel like they loved the pick of Will McDonald, as they are going right back to edge rusher once again. But I don't think if you're asking Farr to be the guy, the dominant edge rusher, I think you're not getting that with Warren Farr, but you're getting a guy who can come in and be a great secondary guy, and it's just up to them to try to find either a good collection of number 2s or just find that elite number 1, because Farr is a great complementary piece. How about the Titans at 24? They are going with linebacker Moses Thornton. I said that we'd probably see another linebacker get taken in the first round, and here he is. The Georgia linebacker kind of flew under the radar on Georgia, but I mean, he's a Georgia player. He's obviously going to be really disciplined, really good, really reliable. And for a coach in Mike Vrabel, obviously a former linebacker, I have no doubt in my mind that he is going to be able to get the best out of Thornton. And I'm kind of surprised it took this long for a first-round linebacker or a big-time linebacker to really find his way to Tennessee. Because Mike Vrabel, I know he can get the best out of linebackers and, maybe take, mid-round guys and make them into quality starters. But I really want to see what Mike Vrabel does at his specialty position that he played and what kind of mentorship he can give to Thornton. And I have very, very high hopes for what the development of Moses Thornton can look like. The Seahawks at pick 25 will go edge rusher John Lamb out of Florida. Florida was a very, very disappointing team in the college football season this past year, but John Lamb was a strong suit for them, racking up double-digit sacks, and it adds to a defense that already went with Tyreek Woolen and Witherspoon and, brought back Bobby Wagner, and they were just really missing an edge rush, and I think that maybe they think John Lamb is their guy finally. This team has tried to get edge rush, and it's failed year after year, but maybe they have their guy. I hope so, because that would be a pretty fun defense to watch if they can get an elite edge rusher. This is the draft pick that we acquired in the Devontae Adams trade. And at 26, we are selecting safety Gabe Marietta from Missouri. Now, Marietta is a player who is an absolute playmaker. And I felt like this team sorely, desperately needed playmaking on defense. This is a team that just didn't cause many turnovers. And Marietta, you look at his athletic profile, it's not anything special. It's pretty standard, but you won't see these jump off the page numbers on the athletic profile. But what you will see jumping off the page is the 6 interceptions that he had, and the forced fumble, the fumble recovery, a sack. He did a little bit of everything, and he once again was a leader on defense. And you can maybe see where the Raiders are going. They went with probably the best leader on offense with Thomas DeShong, and I'd say aside from Clement Trombetta, the best leader on defense, as Gabe Marietta was an emotional leader of the Missouri defense and always made the big plays at the big times and the big games, helped Missouri get to a ranked top 15 status in the polls at one point in the season. And I hope he can adjust to the NFL level and his athleticism won't hold him back, but I would say that this is an upgrade from Marcus Epps or, whoever else we decide to play. Maybe we'll play him over Morig, but I imagine we're going to play him over Marcus Epps, as we just need playmaking. We need interceptions. We need turnovers. We had Marcus Peters last year, and Marcus Peters, I don't even think picked off a pass. He might have picked off like one. We need some playmaking. We need some guys who can turn the ball over and steal some possessions, and I think Marietta can do that very well. There are some draft picks that you look at, and it's like, oh, that's a scary match. And this is the draft pick that I look at, looking at a Chiefs team that is in our division that we got to deal with twice a year, and I'm like, oh, that is a terrifying draft pick, and this is a terrifying draft pick. They go Keegan Upton, the tight end from North Carolina, who I had a lot of nice things to say about, and I mean, who knows how long Travis Kelce's going to be great. But even if not, anytime soon, we're going to see Keegan Upton at least as the number 2 tight end and getting a lot of reps, as we can see the Chiefs go with a lot of 2 tight ends throughout the season. And he is a bulldozer. He is a tank. He is a physical, just dominant tight end after the catch. I mean, I don't want to say as high a praise as Gronk, but he's got a little bit of a Gronk energy to him when it comes to just how much he is willing to just run over and bowl over defenders. Could lead to some injury problems, but he's been pretty healthy in college for the most part. And at the very least, where you're going to have Travis Kelce mentoring this dude. And if he can, polish up his route running, polish up some of his receiving skills, you're having a guy who can find the hole in the zone. And once you get the ball in his hands, he is more dangerous to tackle than Travis Kelce. So this is a very terrifying pick from the Chiefs, and I don't look forward to facing him if he develops into a great player. The 49ers back on the clock with their second first-round pick. This is their original first-round pick, and they said that, you got to watch out for those Texas offensive linemen. Well, here's the second one to go in the first round. It is Darnell Bishop, and with Trent Williams retiring, this pick makes a lot of sense. He will step right in and fill in for Trent Williams, and I said Texas had the best offensive line in all of college football, so it's obvious to see why he is a quality player, all NCAA player, all Big 12 player. And I guess the only knock you can say about any of these Texas offensive linemen is their offensive line was so strong that, was it just a product of playing on a really good unit? How will he do when he's not surrounded by just greatness everywhere? How will he do when he's just on his own on an island on the outside? I think he'll hold up pretty nicely. Obviously, he's not the player that A.J. Perkins was, which is why Perkins went in the top 10. But I think it's a nice pick, and a pick that makes a lot of sense for the Niners. With the 29th pick, the Cowboys. Little interesting here. They go Tristan June at running back. Now, I don't know if I fully understand the pick, but June is a great player. Was, in my estimation, the top running back in the nation. 18 touchdowns, 1,500 yards, and really pushed Washington to being a dangerous team that threatened to make the college football playoff if they, didn't get steamrolled by the momentum of Oregon. But June is a great back. I don't know, because this team didn't move on from Tony Pollard. Maybe the plan is to eventually move on from Tony Pollard. But, it provides them a very dangerous 1-2 punch, at least in the short term. And in the long term, Tristan June is going to be a workhorse back for them. And the Cowboys, they like a workhorse back. And I guess that's a positive and a negative, because June has racked up hundreds and hundreds of carries in his college career, over 600 carries. So you can say it's a lot of tread on the tires, but you can also say he can handle the workload. I don't know what that really means for his career, because he's not really been an injury concern, but again, a lot of tread on the tires. You know how running backs work. They can fall off at any moment, but I think the Cowboys got themselves a really good back, and at the very, very least, you have a very dangerous 1-2 punch at the running back position for a number of years. The Ravens at 30, they fell just shy of a Super Bowl appearance, and this is the furthest they have gotten with Lamar Jackson after finally surrounding him with some weapons like Odell Beckham and Zay Flowers. They go in back to the defense now with their first-round pick, as Eric Coleman from Oklahoma at D tackle is going to be the selection. And I think this is a very solid pick from, a team that is on the verge of a Super Bowl trophy. I don't think they're getting quite the level of upside the Falcons got with their D tackle, earlier on in the first round. But again, another player provides a lot of upside, a lot of athleticism, 37 reps on the bench, and a 4.8 40, 15 tackles for loss at Oklahoma. And he's going to be an absolute run stuffer in the middle of their defense. And, maybe he could be a piece to push them over the top for that Super Bowl trophy. Speaking of being on the verge of a Super Bowl, back-to-back years, they are the runner-ups. And the Eagles, with the 31st pick, go Don Shelton. And I really am intrigued by this pick. Shelton was Raleigh Cordula's running buddy at USC, who had a very bad quarterback situation, as we know. Yet he still managed to hit over 1,000 yards and average about 20 yards a catch. He was an absolute blazer, running a 4.3. And he has a very, very similar body build to Devontae Smith, who is also on the Eagles. Devontae Smith is 6'1", 170. Don Shelton is 6'1", 180. And they both have that similar lanky type body frame, except Shelton is just a straight up burner, a straight up deep threat down the field. And I think it is a massive upgrade going from Quez Watkins to Don Shelton. It's going to help the Eagles passing game even more. And, a team that was obviously a step away from the Super Bowl once again and had arguably the best receiving duo in the league, they can now challenge for the best receiving trio in the league. And with the final pick of the first round, we see the Buffalo Bills, your Super Bowl champions, led by Josh Allen, your Super Bowl MVP, going with Alex Vincent, a defensive tackle out of Georgia. A lot of defensive tackles really snuck into the first round in this draft, and is yet another guy who 300 plus pounds, strong, can stuff the run, and it adds to a defensive line rotation that the Bills love to just stockpile with talent. You know, they're going to already have Ed Oliver and Greg Rousseau and all these other talented players, and he's just going to add to the bunch. But that'll do it for the first round. Now, we still have a few more picks to cover. I am only going to be covering other draft story players that didn't get picked in the first round, and then our second, third, and fourth round pick. And that is just about it. So we will move on to the other players, the, best of the rest, I should say. The Raiders back on the clock, their third overall pick in the second round, and we go wide receiver, Jaden Sharew from Ole Miss. And now Sharew was a player who very well could have been a first round pick, but unlike a guy who got taken just a few picks ahead of him, Don Shelton was a amazing deep thrower who averaged over 20 yards a catch. Sharew is a player who can do a bit of everything, but is elite at nothing. And I think for a team that really needs some receiver help, we just need a guy who we can rely on. He's got some slightly inconsistent hands, so maybe some drop issues will be a bit of an issue early on. But, I mean, he is a 6'1" player in a 4.4. I think he's very good after the catch, but he's not an elite deep threat. He's not an elite route runner. He's not an elite anything. He can do a bit of everything. He doesn't have any strong weaknesses, but he doesn't have... I think his best strength is run after the catch, but it's good, but not elite. And I think he can slide in and be a starting receiver for us day one, and he can give us, like I said, a little bit of everything. The very next pick was a fun one, as the Bears, already with Reggie Woodward as an edge rusher, already with Thurman Melvin as a receiver, they go Dominique James, the home run hitting running back from Georgia, who had almost 2,000 all-purpose yards in his final season of college. And this is going to be a fun team. I think they're having a really good draft. I mean, now you have 3 good receivers and a home run hitting running back, and in the backfield, what are you going to do with Dominique James and Justin Fields there? That's just going to be a dangerous duo to cover as 2 guys who could take it to the house at any given moment. And Dominique James is trying to come along as a pass catcher. He caught over 50 balls in his senior season. Could be a nice little outlet player and, safety blanket for Fields to dump it off to in the flats, and maybe he can make a big play. I think the Bears are doing a great job, and they're giving Fields every opportunity to be great. How about we jump ahead to the third round, where the Raiders, with their pick, go with Leo Wilcox, a guard/tackle from Notre Dame. Notre Dame, obviously, always great with the offensive line, and it's a pipeline for the NFL to go with offensive linemen. We're bringing him in as a tackle. We lost Jermaine Illuminor. We let him walk, and we couldn't really find anyone to replace him. We brought in John Runyon to be a guard. So we're going to be kicking Leo Wilcox out to tackle. Now, worst case scenario, he has to move back into guard for the future, but we're going to play him at tackle this season to get him the experience. And he was an all ACC, I should say, guard. And he has the capabilities of playing tackle. Again, worst case scenario, he's a guard for the future. But we want to get him on the field early, and we are desperately needing a tackle, and we didn't want to just reach on a tackle because it was a more position in need. We're going to take the best offensive lineman we felt was on the board, which was Wilcox, maybe a guard, but we're going to see if he can develop as a tackle. I think it's the better pick long-term because we're going with just the straight-up best lineman on our board. And it's about time. Vance Isak comes off the board. It takes till the third round for Isak to come out. And the Dolphins pick him up. And once again, that's a scary possibility. You're going to have Tyreek Hill on one side. You're going to have Jalen Waddle on the other side. And in the slot, a massive beast of a slot receiver in Vance Isak, who doesn't really mesh with the Dolphins' core of just speed, but he provides a very unique unique player who is going to just be... I compared him to Juju Smith-Schuster, but I think he has better run after the catch ability than Juju, and he provides a great possession, red zone threat. Obviously the Dolphins receivers Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and losing Mike Gesicki, they don't really have a red zone threat, and I think he provides them with a red zone threat that they have not had since losing Gesicki. So I think it's a really nice pick, and I don't know what he's going to do in that offense, because I don't know how Mike McDaniel's thinking and how he wants to use him, but Mike McDaniel has another weapon, and that is a scary thought. Earlier on in the first round, I was talking about how the Steelers were putting together a really nice defense, and that I thought that they were maybe a cornerback and a linebacker away from being a really terrifying defense. And well, here they go, a linebacker, Kepa Tonga from Utah. Now, I really feel like Tonga is a limited upside player, but I think he's a really nice player who can pair next to Cole Holcomb very well and be a great run stopper. So I like this pick a lot for the Steelers. He is, a hard-nosed, physical Steeler player. He fits in the culture of the Steelers, and with over 120 tackles and 13 tackles for loss in his senior season, helping push Utah to a top 15 ranking, I think it's a nice fit. And the Steelers, once again, are really shining with the defense in this offseason as a whole. I think that the Steelers' defense is going to be a terrifying one in the next coming years. Now, we decided to go and make a trade up. Now, if you remember, we traded Hunter Renfrow. The picks that we acquired from the Bills in the Hunter Renfrow trade, we paired with some of the late-round picks that we got in the Davante Adams trade, and we packaged them to move up into the mid to late third round, and we select cornerback Jeff Southward out of Texas Tech, a long, lanky cornerback who is not a playmaker, but will get his hands on the football and will swat the ball down. He is a bit on the slower side, which is why he fell this far, but he is a long-armed, just nice cornerback. He's not as physical as I would have liked. I think if he were a physical, press corner, he would have went in the second round, maybe could have snuck into the first round, but he needs to really strengthen up. I think he needs to bulk up a little bit. If he's going to have 4.5 speed, I would like to see him get a bit stronger out there, but I think that's stuff we can really teach and work into him. So he's going to get maybe more playing time than he should early on with our cornerback deficiencies, but we're going to hope he holds up and can maybe be a piece of this defense for the future. Now, how about we have some fun? I couldn't resist. I really couldn't resist. And it's because wide receiver Kalen Shanny made it to our 4th round pick, and it was no surprise that he was going to make it to our 4th round pick. He was a player that was very much a early to mid day 3 player. So while we are maybe reaching a little bit by the consensus, I don't care. I really like Kalen Shanny. He might be 5'7". He might be 170 pounds. He might get absolutely destroyed out there. Who knows? But for a player that presents 4.29 speed, the fastest receiver in the class, for a player that has 5 career return touchdowns at Florida, for a player that averaged nearly 20 yards a catch over his career at Florida, I really am intrigued. And I know this team took Trey Tucker last year, but I think Kalen Shanny is better than Trey Tucker and provides us more than Trey Tucker, because while Tucker is a nice deep threat, I think Shanny's better with the ball in his hands. And I get the concerns of a 5'7", 170-pound player getting knocked around. At least with Devontae Smith's 170 pounds, he also pairs it with a 6 foot plus, body, and, he can protect himself a bit better. But Shanny's just a tiny guy, and like I said, at the bare minimum, my analysis for him coming out was at the bare minimum, he's going to be an elite return man, and he will step in and at the very least be an elite return man for us day 1. And I want to get him on the field early and often, as I really want to, inject this team with a bit of life, a little bit of speed. Deshaun, fast for a quarterback. Kalen Shanny, 4.2 speed. Sharu, 4.4 speed. We're getting some fast guys on the field, and we're going to try to make this a dynamic and dangerous offense. Now that will wrap up the draft, but I have one last player I want to show you. And I don't usually do this, and I wouldn't usually have done this, but I found a really interesting player in the undrafted free agency section, and I will let you know right now. With our 5th round pick, we took a 3rd string tight end. With our 6th round pick, we took a practice squad running back, a backup offensive lineman, and with our 7th round pick, we took, just another backup lineman. So, not the most exciting stuff, so I didn't really feel like it was necessary to show you. But this player right here felt like it was interesting to show, because I really had to go and dig for his, combine and everything. I had to really, put in some work to figure out who the heck this guy was, because he was not a draftable running back. He was on nobody's radar. Yet when I popped into the undrafted section of the market, this guy came up. Josh Moss, a running back from Oklahoma. You can see why he went undrafted. He's about as slow as it gets for running back. 4.6 speed is brutal. He is not fast. He is not agile. He is just a bowling ball. But I like it. I like that he is a bowling ball of a running back, and he made the final roster. He had 9 touchdowns as a senior, and, he didn't average a whole lot of yards per carry, but that's just because he's a short yardage goal line running back. I think he's a player who can maybe step in and be a fullback, hybrid running back, short yardage situation type of player. I think he's a fun guy to have on the team, and I wouldn't be surprised if he got on the field earlier than you'd expect for an undrafted player. But that will do it for the offseason, and, as I talk here, I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek of Thomas DeShong in the offense. But I hope you all enjoyed this offseason. We, went out there. We struggled a little bit in free agency with the lack of interest that we drew, but we were able to draft a potential game-changing quarterback and, really take a risk. And then we go with our Devontae Adams pick, grab a safety. We grab 2 wide receivers that could be really exciting. We grab a lineman to replace Jermaine Illuminor, and an undrafted running back that could be a lot of fun. I think this was a fun offseason, and this team is going to look a lot different. The playbook's going to change a lot to really fit the injection of speed that we got here, and I really hope you enjoyed what I did with the draft special, rather than just simming through the draft and showing you pick by pick, actually giving you a little bit of a breakdown of all the players and making all the graphics. The graphics took a lot of time to make, and it's kind of why, the upload slowed down a little bit, because I spent a lot of time making this stuff for, this and the upcoming season with all the new draft prospects that I'm going to be implementing. But, yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the off-season, and I hope you're looking forward to the new season. I think that the first season's always a bit of a drag to get through, because, you're kind of stuck playing with the team you inherited and not really the team that you got to make your mark on. But the team is now exciting, the team is now fun, and I'm really looking forward to this next season. And season 2 of the Raiders will be coming out very, very soon. So, long video, fun off season. Hope you all enjoyed, though. See you in the next one.